Taking great real estate photos makes all the difference between getting tons of buyers or renters into your property versus not. You want to put your best foot forward out there online so that everyone can see the amazing features of your home, and that starts with taking great photos. So today I'm going to share with you an interview that I did with Rachel Hitchcock. She is one of our photographers that we use. She's amazing. She does very detailed, really great real estate photography for all of our sales, for our rentals, and it really puts these properties in the best light possible. So she has some really good tips. So we'll get to that video. I'm Sue Richey. I'm the broker of a property management and real estate brokerage in the Washington, D.C. suburbs in Virginia. So having somebody like her on our team is fantastic because we know that we can really try to maximize the rents and the sale and the dollars for sale for our clients. So let's get to the video and see what she has to say. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're talking today about how to take great real estate photography. And so I decided that it made sense to bring in the expert. And so I have Rachel Hitchcock here with me today. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And Rachel is one of our favorite photographers who does photography for us, for our sales, for all of our rentals. And she does an amazing job. And so I just wanted to bring her on to talk about a few tips that we could share with you guys that will help you take great photos for whether you're a real estate agent doing this yourself or whatever it is. We've got some things to share with you. So let Rachel just first introduce herself and kind of her background.
Yes. Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm a photographer, videographer, author, and also a tour guide in the area as well. I've gotten into real estate photography within the last couple of years. I've been doing more of that and just expanding my portfolio of photography work. I'm really interested in homes and how you decorate a space and make that look the best it can visually. And you can do that with a camera, but also with an iPhone too.
Yeah. And, I think this whole topic, part of getting the most money for your rental property starts with how you put it out there to the world. And that all comes back to photography. And so it's the little details that matter. So I think that kind of gets us into our first point. We have probably 5 areas that Rachel has prepared that we're going to talk about today. And the first one kind of being the whole setup. This is almost all the stuff before you even start to take the pictures, right?
Yes. So when you get into a property, the first thing you want to do is just take a look around and make sure that things are neat and orderly. Hopefully, if someone's living there already, they've done some of that work for you as the photographer going in there. If not, look around and see, okay, how are the blinds looking? Something that I always think of when I first get into a property is I want to open up all the blinds, and then if I have strings with them, just lay them on the windowsill. That little detail really goes a long way than rather just having them hang on the floor or be uneven.
Yeah. And I'm really shocked at the kinds of photos I see out there on our multiple listing service. I see toilet seats open and towels hanging crooked, and just like, it's those little things that you literally need to go into each room and go, what is this going to look like? Neaten up everything. Really, I think decluttering is a huge part. We tell people up front, I think as a photographer too, and whether you work with a real estate agent or not, I think it would be a great idea to be able to kind of have a checklist to give to the homeowner if somebody's living there. Obviously, vacant home photography is a bit different, but if somebody's living there, okay, do all these things before I get there, because that will save you a lot of time, right? And you don't have to do this, because we before we used to use professional photography. Craig, who is my husband, he loves photography too. And he used to take great photos too, but he would literally spend so much time. We would move half the room into the other room, take the photos and move it all back. And we would just spend so much time. I was kind of going around doing all those things, and it saved a tremendous amount of time, but yeah. I think it also makes the space look bigger. We tell people when we're staging a home, not just staging, but just getting ready to put it on the market, as people walk through, the more you declutter and the more you depersonalize it, it's good for buyers. If they see all that stuff in the background too, in the photos, it's a little bit distracting. You want them to focus on the home, the cool features, and taking the big pictures, and also the little details that are special in that home.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I was at a property where they had a bookcase that covered the entirety of a wall, and they had personal photos and books over the entire thing. And it was really nicely organized. However, in the photos, it does look a bit more cluttered. And so just if you are planning to move out of the place and you're putting it up for rent, just consider moving those things out before you have a photographer come, because it does make a difference. And then someone looking at the photo instead isn't distracted by all of the different items that they're seeing on the shelf, but instead they're seeing, oh, there's a really nice bookshelf in here. Like, that's a nice feature to have.
Exactly. And I think inside and outside, if you add some flowers or planters or just things that kind of bring some liveliness to it too. I mean, those are just, I think, nice to do things too. So
yeah, it makes it more warm and homey. And looking at those photos, you want to feel like this is a place that you could live in.
exactly. So take the time to do all the prep. I think the other thing I would add to that is, once you've decluttered, before you actually start the shoot, kind of walk through the house, turn on the lights, make sure you open all the blinds, or, and we'll talk about lighting later. I know that's one of the big things that Rachel did, every photographer focus on, but we're going to talk about, but opening all that so that you kind of have that flow and that everything's ready to go. Right.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Do that all before you do the photos.
Yeah. Yep. And so, okay. So let's talk about gear. What kind of stuff do people need, or does a photographer, or even somebody who's doing their own photos, what do they need?
I think the most important thing is to have a wide angle lens. So if you're working with a professional photographer that has a DSLR or mirrorless camera, you want to ensure that they have a wide angle lens, which would be, in technical terms, anywhere from a 14 to an 18 millimeter lens. So what that'll do is allow you to see basically what the eye sees with peripheral vision. So I shoot with a 14 millimeter lens, and that's about 110 degrees of seen throughout the room. So it's more realistic. It's not so tight. The shots can be more open just overall.
Yeah.
And the newer iPhones, they have wide angle lens feature as well. So if you just swipe and yeah.
Yeah, I've done that on my iPhone when I've just been in a house and I'm like, okay, I need to take a quick photo because just to use it for some pre-marketing or before. And I just put it on the 2 setting, and it's like amazing. But I think the thing that people need to be careful about is making sure, even if you use a wide angle, because that's a good way to put it. What do you see? Because sometimes you take a picture, like, it looks cooler than that. It looks bigger than that. But sometimes when that photo looks so big, and then people come to the house and you're like, what?
Not realistic.
So yeah, then it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Opposite effect. That gets frustrating. I remember one time I had an open house at a property I was selling, and I believe Craig did these photos, but he did a good job. And we kind of maximize the space. But the one comment somebody had was, wow, this actually looks like what it looks like online. Because I think it just, sometimes those, like with fisheye stuff and even with video, like, it gets really distorted, and it's, I think, trying to keep it as real as possible, but maximizing the beauty of it is that's that fine line, right?
It is, yes. And so one of the things to think about when it comes to equipment, but also this distortion that you're talking about, it helps if you have a tripod. So if you're using a camera, and also if you are using the iPhone, I would suggest putting on the grid lines, either for your camera or the iPhone. And so what that'll do is allow you to find, for example, like in the corner of a room where the 2 walls meet, using that vertical line to make sure that the photo is being shot straight on. And so if you do have the wide angle lens, using those grid lines and just realistic markers within the room, that'll make sure that you're not shooting the photo in a distorted way that is going to look askew when you see it. So making sure that your camera isn't tilted forward or tilted back, and also just having it be level in general.
That makes sense.
And some cameras and tripods have levels in them, which is a really nice feature. So it can ensure that you are shooting in the most accurate way.
Yeah. And so I think, that those two things, I mean, the wide angle, the tripod, keeping it still, being able to, like get the full space, those are probably the two biggest things that you need. I mean, obviously you can go crazy on the kind of camera and all the cool stuff, but if you want to just take good basic photos, those are probably the two most important things. Is that what you were?
Yes, definitely. The wide angle lens and a tripod to make sure you don't have the shakiness that you might have with shooting with the camera at a low shutter speed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the next part, which is really sort of don't rush the photo shoot. I'll let Rachel kind of expand on that because she does such a great, detailed, thorough job, and that's super important.
Mm-hmm. I'm very detail oriented. So when I first get to a place, like we talked about, you're making sure that everything is set up right. And then you get an idea of the space. If you hadn't already seen the photos or known how many rooms there are, it's important to look around and get a feel for how long it's probably going to take you to do the actual shoot. And with all that being said, you want to make sure you have enough daylight when you are going to a place. So if you think the shoot's going to take an hour and a half or so, let the people know that the realtor or someone that's living there know it's probably going to take this much time. And I always suggest scheduling shoots in the morning or the later afternoon. And the reason for that is you have the nice light. And when shooting exterior shots, for example, shooting it right at the peak of the afternoon hours, the light is going to be really harsh. And that's not as big of a deal when you're shooting the interior shots, but it will be noticeable. You will have noticeable shadows and contrasty light.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, allowing enough time to do it is, and setting that up for the client is important too, because they don't know, but yeah, that's important. Okay. And then as far as the gear, I mean, your camera inside out, but for someone who's taking it and understanding kind of the features, is that, we talked about knowing your camera and kind of just how to use it appropriately, and so that you can take the best pictures.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. And you want to know your camera before you get to a shoot. Otherwise, you're going to take a lot longer than you anticipated. So there's 3 important settings when shooting with the camera, and that is the shutter speed, the aperture, and your ISO. So the ISO is the brightness that you're setting your camera at. You want it to be no more than 400 ISO, because the bigger number that you select with it, the grainier the photos will be. Then for the aperture, that's how much of the photo is in focus. So having the setting be at f8 to f11, that's about the perfect range to make sure that everything in the photo will be in focus, and you're not just going to have, just the foreground or just the background be nice and crisp. So then you have this last third setting. This third setting is the only one that you're really going to be messing with once you get everything set up for the right lighting based on the room or the lighting of the exterior that day. So if you have a tripod, this is when you will be most appreciative, because having the shutter speed be lower than about 1/60th of a second is when you'll notice that handshake. So what I do is I use a digital remote that actually takes the photos for me. So I set the camera to be at the perfect exposure, which would say plus 0.0. So it's not too dark and it's not too light. And then when I use this remote, it will take a photo at -2.0 and +2.0. So you have the underexposed image, the properly exposed image, and the overexposed image. So that sounds like a whole lot, but it actually does. It's really helpful though for the photographer when you're editing the photos after the fact.
Makes sense.
So what you do is you just merge those 3 photos together, and then that's the actual photo that you'll use.
Wow.
And so the windows will be properly exposed. The dark spots of the room are going to be properly exposed. And it's just harder to get that with a single shot.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a camera, that's okay. There still are features within the iPhone that you can use to help with that.
Yeah.
So something to think about is when you have your camera set up, just tapping the focus on it. And if you tap the window, for example, it's going to expose for the window, as opposed to tapping in the darkest part. It will brighten the photo even more.
This is on your phone you're talking about.
On the phone, yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it would be great if we do another video just kind of specifically on the iPhone, because I think a lot of people, like what you're saying, for me, it's kind of going over my head, because I love taking photos, but I'm a good Instagram iPhone kind of photographer. The camera settings, that's for me, that's why we leave it to you. And I think it's what you just said kind of points out the fact that there's so much work that goes on after and actually before, in the setup and the preparation and understanding the room, the light, all those things, and how you set your camera up. But then afterwards in the editing, there's so much more. If you really want great photography, then you really hire the expert. But there are ways to do it kind of on your own and on a budget and doing the quick things. So I think that we'll just do another quick video later about the iPhone specifically, because it does take awesome pictures, but not the same. It's not going to give you all of that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important to consider the benefits that you get with hiring a professional photographer versus also just learning how to use your iPhone better as well. And exactly. That's something that I've explored a lot within the last year too, as I've been doing photo tours, and a lot of the time people are shooting with their iPhones.
Yeah.
And so, figuring out those settings to make what could just be just a quick click of the button and you never think about it again. But if you think about it, just even 5 seconds before you take the photo, it can make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is, that's just so important. I think just having these great photos is, like I said before, I mean, this is where you're going to maximize your money. This is when you see, everybody's looking online, you see cool houses and the way they're photographed. You don't even realize probably what goes into it in the background and in the editing, but you just know you're drawn to it. And if you're really looking for a home and it's a home, you're going to go to that one instead of the one that has the crappy photos. So here's some examples, based on all of the things we just talked about. We kind of wanted to give you some examples of some good and bad photography. Obviously, the good ones are some of the ones that Rachel did, and some of the bad ones are ones we found online. So hopefully this isn't your home, but let's talk about these a little bit and what's good and bad about them.
So here's a good example of what to do and what not to do. So you can see on this right edge of the photo here that it is perfectly lined up vertically, but something that I notice is the strings of the blinds. They're just kind of hanging on the floor relatively aimlessly. So what you can do is just take them, pull the bottom ends together, and just lay it on the windowsill. So you wouldn't even notice that they're there. This is an example of a house that was completely filled up. The people were still living there, and they just had quite a few things. But they did a really good job about cleaning what they did have. So in the case of having a lot of things that you can't just hide away in a closet, organizing them like this, like putting things to the side of the room and just having a neat, orderly look to it, will make more of a difference than if these toys were to just be lying around randomly on the floor.
I love the little parking lot of cars. But it's true. That makes it definitely makes you see the space. If they were all kind of, around the middle, you wouldn't really get a sense of, wow, it's pretty roomy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now we've got some bad examples to show you. In this case, nearly all of the photos were shot vertically and at an angle. Now, when you're walking into a place, you're probably not going to be walking in with your head tilted to the side. You're probably going to be walking normally and straight. And you want the photos to give that feel that you are just entering this room and there is a nice flow to it. So you can see that there was a few details that they just kind of overlooked when they took the photo. Like there's a cupboard open here.
Wow.
And you've got a dish rag just hanging in the corner there.
Yeah, I have to say bathrooms are tricky to photograph because you definitely I mean it's a small space, so you've got to get back enough, you got to use the right thing. You definitely don't want it to be crooked like this one, but you also don't want to be in the mirror. So and get your shadow in the glass of the shower. So it's tricky to maneuver, but sometimes you just have to crouch down. So you got to do those squats and get the right angle and get out of the picture.
Yes, it's a good thing to think about the reflections, because sometimes you don't realize that you are in the photo, but you don't want to see the photographer, you don't want to see the tripod. You just want to see what the room looks like without any other interference.
Exactly. I think one of the things I would add is, like, especially for people who aren't professionals and you want to do it, just have fun with it and be creative. Like, all of these tips are fantastic, and like shooting to the corner and these things. Sometimes I'll take pictures kind of straight on. It kind of gives a little bit more, I don't know, not dramatic, but like more the symmetry, and it's more, I don't know, artsy, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. And then some of those come out really cool. And I don't know, just play around with it. Take pictures of the little nooks and the little things that people want to see that they'll see when they come to the home, but I don't know, just have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's a feature that you personally really like a big bookshelf or a fireplace, or maybe a nook in one part of the room, highlight those features, because someone else looking at it might also gravitate towards those features in a home. And just having fun with it and taking that extra shot can be a game changer for someone that's looking at a place.
Definitely. So let's talk about lighting a little bit, because I know that's a huge part of how, whether it's the natural light, the other lights, just talk about that a little bit, and what people should know about lighting.
Lighting is everything, that is for sure. I think the photos that people are most drawn to are the ones that are really bright and also like have a warm, welcoming feel to it as well. So definitely, if you're looking at a photo that maybe is shot on an iPhone or a camera and it's really dark, you're going to be less drawn to it. And you want to think about what the eye sees. So our eyes correct for the room that we're in so we can see it well. And you want the photos that you take to reflect that. So we mentioned turning on all of the lights when you get into the place. That's really important, but it is important to think about how those lights look in the photo as well. Sometimes like a bright orange or yellow light, it's just not going to look good. And in that case, it's okay to turn some off, but you do want to get as much light as you can in, whether that be artificial light or natural light.
Yeah.
In the case that you're shooting in a darker room and you know that ahead of time, it might be good to bring some extra lights with you if you have them. And even in the case of a smaller room, you could use an iPhone flashlight if you really had to.
Yeah. Yeah. The and it depends on the mood of the room. If you're in like, photographing a very cool, like dark library or kind of thing, I mean, obviously that's the mood you want to create, but I know I'm definitely drawn to the ones that are bringing more natural light, that are just bright, but every home doesn't have that. Every day doesn't have that. Today is a super rainy day and it's kind of darkish, but you just have to accommodate, because you can't always reschedule the shoot. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So just come prepared and know those little tricks to get as much light in. Just opening the blinds all the way can really make all the difference.
It really does. Even if you think just that little extra, but it makes a huge difference. So yeah, I think that all of those tips were great. I think you've got a document that Rachel put together, kind of summarizing some of these tips and with a little bit more detail that you can download in the notes, and give you some more just helpful hints in your real estate photography. But Yeah, but I mean, Rachel, she's just an amazing young woman who does a lot of very cool things. I mean, photojournalism, that she's got both ends of it, between the writing, the photography, but she's done amazing work for us. So if you are in the Washington area, I'm going to put all her contact information below. And if you are in Northern Virginia or DC or Maryland and you need a great photographer, then she's your girl. But yeah, so let's do one about the iPhone, and we'll do that sometime in the future. And if you guys are watching, if there are any questions you specifically have, you've got Rachel's info, but you can comment here and we'll try and get back to you too. So
Yeah.
thanks, Rachel, for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yes,
it.
and like Sue said, you can check out my website, which is rachelhitch.com, and feel free to reach out through that or in the YouTube comments as well. And I'd love to talk to any and all of you about house photos or other just photo work in general. And like she mentioned, I'm also a writer too, and I've got a new photo book coming out soon.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, thank you. And I'll talk to you soon, and you guys take care.